Hello, welcome. Lovely to see your faces, some of your faces, and to feel the rest of you joining. So people are still joining. So let's just take a couple of minutes to settle and ground in ourselves as people are arriving. So however that feels good to each one of us, maybe feeling the ground underneath us. Sense of just arriving here with whatever intentions have carried us to come to this session. Just attuning to the sense of Sangha gathering, community gathering. And also attuning into our own being. So there's something that can be something very supportive and connecting and powerful about coming into community get together to practice. And also recognizing that within that there's our own heart, our own listening, our own being and body. That we're attuning to and aligning with also in this experience. Okay. So first of all, just to say welcome. And for any of you who I don't know, I'm Sumedha. I'm one of the core teachers with this Sacred Mountain Sangha. And in these Sunday sessions, the main session is for an hour, and there'll be a time of chanting, a guided meditation, and then some time for reflections. And at the end of that hour, there'll be another 20 minutes or so if you want to stay on for questions or sharing at the end. So that's the kind of outline. And just to say, I live off-grid in the forest, so my internet is usually remarkably good given where I live. But if it drops, I will come back. So just to say that. So it never has done in one of these sessions, but you never know. So just to let you know. So I'll put the link to the chanting booklet in the chat, and we'll start off with some chanting. And for those of you who may be familiar with it, that's wonderful. And if you're less familiar, then just finding your way into whether you want to listen and attune to the kind of vibrations of it, or you want to join in, it's all fine. So chanting can be a very helpful practice for kind of bringing together our kind of our voice and our body and our heart mind, and tuning into the teachings and a whole field of practice that has gone over ages. So it can be a really beautiful practice. And we'll start with the refuges and precepts on page 3. And I'll keep putting it in the chat for people who are joining. And the theme that I want to talk about today is attention, and there's something very powerful also about like regularly recollecting something. So this chanting of the refuges and precepts is a regular recollection, and it can really have an effect on the heart. So let's start with that. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Panatipata vedapani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from intentionally taking life. Adinadana vedapani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kame sumicha chara vedapani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from misuse of sexuality and the senses. Musawada vedapani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from speech that is false, divisive, harsh, and meaningless. Suramiraya majapamadhatana vedapani sikkhapadang samadhiyami. I undertake the training to refrain from intoxication which leads to carelessness. And then we can go to the recollection of the triple jewel on page 4. So we'll chant it in Pali, and it can be really nice to come back to it and read the translations and contemplate what this might mean within each of us and in our own practice and hearts as well, and experience. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijacharana sampano sugato lokavidu anutaro purisa dhamma sarati sata dewa manusanam Buddho Bhagavati Sawakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayiko Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhiti Supatipano Bhagavato Sawakasango Ujupatipano Bhagavato Sawakasango Nyayapatipano Bhagavato Sawakasango Samichipatipano Bhagavato Sawakasango adidam chatari purisa yuga niyata purisa pugala esa bhagavato sawakasango ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anutarang punya ketam lokasati. And then let's do the chant, the 4 boundless qualities on page 8. So this is a contemplation and a tuning to a radiation of these 4 boundless qualities: loving kindness, compassion, gladness, or sympathetic joy, and equanimity, that are really said to be natural capacities within us that sometimes we forget that they're there. So chanting is lovely as a way of reminding ourselves and suffusing, as this chant says, inwards and outwards. Now let us make the 4 boundless qualities shine forth. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with compassion. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with gladness. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. I will abide, pervading 1/4, with a heart imbued with equanimity. Likewise the 2nd, likewise the 3rd, likewise the 4th. So above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself. I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a heart imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. can finish with a mantra, going back to page 3. And let's chant the mantra number 4. Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha. Homage to Tara, compassion expressed as enlightened activity. And really bringing into our heart and mind any beings or life force that we would like to share these blessings with, and attuning to that energy within ourselves and maybe that support within the universe. So homage to Tara. Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha. 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 Just allowing ourselves to stay in the flow of listening and presence that might have been slowly arriving as we sit, as we chant, as we invoke and remember and bring attention to these forces and potentials for awakening. Maybe noticing how it is for our being to bring attention to these qualities. Even in chanting, remembering the qualities of awakeness, and compassion. What does this do in our heart? Does it have a helpful effect? As we listen into our being, really noticing that we have this capacity for guiding our attention. So maybe first of all, we notice how we are. We can choose to guide our attention into our body, feel the contact of the earth. The rhythm of the breath. Really consciously take in the effect this has on our being. So it's almost like what our mind comes into contact with, what we can direct it to with our attention, and start to take in those qualities. So the connection or the steadiness of the earth can help steady and connect our sense of our presence here, and steady our attention itself. The rhythm of the breath can vitalize or soothe a sense of presence and our attention itself. Very often in the kind of general running along of daily life, our attention can get caught this way, that way. We're not really aware of what's catching it, conditioning it. And lead us to being stuck or overwhelmed or different things. There's something as a gift in just coming back to noticing we have a capacity for awareness and for directing or guiding our attention, learning with it. Staying conscious of how it's flowing, where it's going. It's something that's it's a deep capacity within our being that it can be really powerful to attune to. We can end the meditation, and as we open our eyes, we engage a little bit more externally, staying in touch with this inner capacity for noticing our attention, noticing where it's going, maybe guiding to where it's helpful for our well-being and the well-being of others, both. Remembering this capacity comes with us. We can end there. As you might have gathered, if you didn't read the send out, the theme that I wanted to speak a bit more about this week is the importance of noticing our attention, so the gift of attention. And I realize over the past few weeks that yes, given the state of the world, given the current administration in the US, the genocide in Gaza, the many ways in which we're harming each other and the planet. There's been a lot of teachings around refuge that feels really important, and different ways that we can stay aligned, protect our hearts, protect each other, protect the sacred web of life, actually. And yeah, for me, I was thinking that this theme of really noticing our attention goes along with this same vein. So the fact that we have the capacity to guide our attention, to notice what it's doing, to notice what it's being conditioned by, to notice how we're placing it. Is that bringing well-being to ourselves, to others, to both? These are like fundamental reflections in the Buddhist teachings that I think are really, really important. So a few weeks ago, I gave a session around truthfulness or integrity, and the quote that I had put for that session was from Hannah Arendt, and she was saying, you know, many years ago, she was saying something like that the level of misinformation that was being put out at that time, and that we're now experiencing as well, is not really so that we believe it. It's so that we lose the capacity to believe anything, or to give our trust to anything or to reflect. I think this is really powerful, and I'm really deeply grateful for the tools for reflection that the Buddhist teachings like really reinforces. So that's a little bit the context of why I wanted to speak about this gift of attention today. So Ajahn Chah, who was one of the main teachers in the lineage that I was trained in, said that our mind is like rainwater, that it's naturally clear. And that what happens is that impressions come along and they drop into the mind. And if we're not aware of what is happening, it's like dye going into water. So, you know, if you drop in yellow dye, the mind will become yellow. If you drop in green dye, the mind will become green, etc. You know, and it's and there's something about that only becomes difficult if we're unaware of what is happening, if we're not bringing attention to it. So there's something about honing our attention, and there's the word heedfulness in the early teachings it's seen as a very, very important quality. Heedfulness, where and how are we placing our attention, the reflectiveness that comes with that. And Ajahn Sucitto, in his book on the Parami, he talks quite a lot actually, about the importance of wise attention. So he says, where our attention gets established, that's where our energy goes. And we tend to take on the value. If we're not aware of what is happening, we tend to take on the values and concerns that come with that. And so it's really good to be conscious of this process. Because when we're unconscious, we just get swept along, or we react to what's arising, or we feel overwhelmed. Whereas, and in our current circumstances, you know, that can be really understandable. And yet there's something very important about remembering that we have the capacity to become aware in each moment, that we have the capacity to notice what is conditioning our attention, where it's going. Is that for well-being or not? Well-being of ourselves, well-being of others, well-being of both. So again, Ajahn Sucitto says that this process where we start to become aware of both how our attention is conditioned and potentially qualities that we might want to cultivate, where we want to give attention, what we want to give energy, the values that we want to uphold. He says that actually this is a level of touching into truthfulness in our being, because we're no longer being just swept along by that which is unconscious. We're becoming aware of the power of our intention and choosing how we wish to direct it, what we wish to cultivate, what we wish to uphold. And he says, you could say that touching into truth, your mind is able to return to healing. And I think this is, for me, this is a really beautiful phrase and a really powerful phrase. So yeah, really the importance, the beauty of this gift of attention. And the Buddha, he said, he really, really reaffirmed this, because he said there's one fact. So Ajahn Sucitto, when he's talking about it, he says there's one factor which is said to be the ground of our cultivation, so like the mother of all Buddhas, and that this is heedfulness. And that the Buddha, in his first discourse, he talked about paying attention or listening as the door to the deathless, as the way in which we start to undermine harmful conditioning in our mind and come to a freedom in our heart, actually. Because when we become aware of the way in which our consciousness is, or our attention is being kind of appropriated in ways that we don't want, we can start to have more choice, more space to be able to choose where we attend and to respond more wisely. And that that when we can choose to attend to things that balance and steady and nourish our capacity to stay present, actually. So there are a few things that I really want to point out about our capacity for intention. And that one of them is that it's not theoretical. So when Ajahn Chito says, that what we give attention to, that's where our energy goes. It's like, for me, I was like, well, what would be an example of that for me? And there are many that could go very deep, but like just a very simple one is when I'm doing yoga and I do the one stand like a tree, where you stand on one leg and put your hands over your head. If I look at something upright, if I look at a tree, my being is steadied. And in my practice, in a long-term basis, I've come back to like the soles of the feet, the contact of the earth, because there's something about that rootedness and connectedness that flows into the attention itself. And the Buddha says we need a mind that is malleable, that is wieldy, that is steady in order to see clearly. So this is not theoretical. We can try it out. When we give our attention to something that is kind of really, really disturbing without any sense of spaciousness, we become disturbed. If we can give our attention to the sense of spaciousness that is receiving the disturbance, it's a very different experience. And that doesn't mean disconnecting, it means we have more capacity to respond. So the first thing to notice about it is that it's not theoretical, and to try this out in our own being. And then another thing that I think is really important is that we're not necessarily encouraged in our society to be awake in this way. So again, when Ajahn Chito is talking about wise attention, he says most often the boundaries of attention in daily life that can actually be quite confusing. So like we're encouraged to just, watch TV or be on the computer a lot. Or it's like kind of we get a strange sense of well-being from just like watching films endlessly or things like this. And society kind of encourages that. And he says about that when your mind is inside activities like that, it's confusing, but nothing is asked of us. We carry no responsibility. So our attention is suspended from our own concerns, which might feel like a relief. But we can become passive, and there's no depth. There's no kind of life force coming through there. So this isn't a big kind of declaration of value judgment. It's something to explore. When our attention goes on to certain activities, does that actually brighten and open and encourage our heart? Does it help us to reflect? And this is something I really loved in the monastery, that there was, we would sometimes chant the reflection, the days and nights are passing. How well am I spending my time? And not as a judgment, as a like, this moment is precious. Where do I wish to be giving my attention? Is that helpful? Because it can be a very enlivening process when we start to question like that. And it's also powerful. So in his section on wise attention, Ajahn Suchito draws out some of the mechanics of attention, where he's like, what we're intending towards moves our attention in certain ways, and where our attention goes also forms our intentions. So say the regular recitation of the precepts, if our intention is carrying us to doing that, and we put our attention there, we tend to deepen in the contemplation of them, which then brings out other intentions in our behavior. We keep growing, keep reflecting. And I think this is really, really important in our practice and in our society. So we can start noticing and guiding our attention, and we notice what it is that might brighten our heart, what it is that might balance our being, and maybe deeper capacities within us. So one of the things that I feel was a real gift from one of my main teachers, Ajahn Sumedha, was that he said, notice awareness, notice that you are aware, notice that you are conscious. Because when we're in an experience, like say if we're in an experience that is really overwhelming, then of course that needs addressing. But there's also something about noticing that we're actually knowing that experience, where there's a space of awareness, that space can help to hold a wiser response, a more discerning response, a more careful response towards our being and towards the situation we may want to respond in. So noticing, first of all, that we can guide our attention, and then noticing that is part of our capacity for awareness, that is right here, is a really precious gift. So this word heedfulness in the text, it's said to lead to the deathless, to lead to that kind of awareness. And then with this kind of deep inquiry that comes with how we're attuning our attention, it's like unconscious intention, as it's talked about in the suttas, is attention that is unconscious, it's ignorant of, say, the causes of suffering. It's ignorant of the Four Noble Truths. It's ignorant of how our experience is conditioned. And we don't have to judge that, and kind of get into a whole story about it, but we can start turning our attention round to become conscious of how our attention is being conditioned, the effects that has, to choose to root our intentions in an exploration of how suffering is arising for ourselves, for others, or for both, which is it's kind of turning the wheel on its head. And Thanissaro Bhikkhu has a really good article about also about wise attention, appropriate attention. And he says that a combination of wise understanding and compassionate intention is what turns the act of attention from a cause of suffering into a strategy for health. And he also uses this word, a healing attention. And then he, just very briefly, but this healing attention is seen as appropriate attention because it looks at ways in which we're wanting to understand the causes of suffering and the releases of them. Which again, this sounds very wordy, but it's very real in our own hearts, in our practice, in our society right now. So, and he gives an example that I think quite speaks to how this attunement to attention can be helpful. So he talks about working with hindrances, and he quotes a sutta. And he talks about how the simple shift in where we give our attention can help to either fuel or undermine those hindrances. And so he talks about the hindrance of doubt, uncertainty. And he says that uncertainty is fed by inappropriate attention to topics that are abstract and conjectural. And it's not fed by appropriate attention to the skillful and unskillful qualities in the mind. In other words, instead of focusing on issues that can't be resolved by observing the present, you focus on an issue that can. Which mental qualities cause harm for the mind and which don't? So it becomes very practical. And when I think about the whole kind of media circus that is happening and all the very, very disturbing movements that are happening in like in US politics, in global politics, actually. And it can be so confusing, and we can feel so lost and so powerless. And then it's like, well, actually, one thing is I can guide my attention and I can notice, what am I cultivating that is for my own well-being, the well-being of others, or for both. I can come back to the fundamental truths of existence, and I can anchor myself there. I can nourish there, so that I'm more able to be present in my practice and in the effects that has in the world. So, and the good news is there are lots and lots of supports for doing this. So it can sound a bit abstract, but like in terms of supports, we can start to look into, what is my sense of aspiration? What feels important to me? What are the values I wish to uphold? And we put our attention there, we give our attention to them, we nourish it, and we let it nourish us. So a sense of aspiration, or chanda, willingness, the sense that there's something more that we want to cultivate. There's a support in the reminders we can give ourselves, like that reminder we often received in the monastery: how well am I spending my time? Or as we ate food, we would give a food blessing, a sense of gratitude for the generosity in the food, and a reflection, actually, like wisely reflecting, I eat this food with a sense of like wishing to respect the body, respect for where it's coming from. So we can give ourselves reminders, or the chants that we've been doing, teachings, refuges. These are all like reminders we can give ourselves. What am I doing with my attention? Community or spiritual friendship can be really good mirroring for where we're not noticing that we're conditioned in certain ways, or like we can mirror to each other our beauty and our blind spots, and that's a really important process. And I think also, like, this invitation to attend, to bring attention, helps us to deepen into the truthfulness and the fabric of our being. So, like, the vastness and the nuance of our living experience. So, like, most often, like, I can speak for myself, I'm very often bumbling along in my little Sumedha bubble as my human being, like doing my little Sumedha thing. And one of the things I've really loved about the Buddhist teachings is the reminder to wake up to, what is this experience actually like? Get curious about it. Open the windows, open the edges. Actually, we're part of a vast web of life. And within our experience, we might say, oh, I'm feeling this. But if we start to feel into the nuance of what's actually going on, we bring our attention there, we deepen, and our experience there's more space to see clearly. And there's also a sense of this life is much larger than our habits would have us think it is. So we bring our attention to the richness and the depth and the largeness and the interconnectedness. And this radically changes the sense of energy, the sense of value, the sense of what we wish to cultivate. Because I know for me, as I've started to feel more, I am made of earth and water, and I'm vulnerable, as you all are vulnerable, as people and beings and plants and animals and elements are vulnerable. That changes my priorities. That both supports and nourishes and brings an incredible resource through giving our attention to it. And it also evokes a sense of care, a sense of like, I wish to take care of this life, actually. This all starts through the act of attention, of listening in, of noticing. So it's like we give ourselves back somewhat through our attention into the sacred web of life with its supports and the kind of responsibilities or values, care that brings. And I feel all this is certainly within the Buddha's vision, because he so asks us to keep reflecting what is for one's own well-being, the well-being of others, the well-being of both. And so we start to also be able to understand the ways that maybe our habitual attention is conditioned, you know, as say a white Western person, maybe very individualistic, very consumerist, having an attitude of objectification as much as one may not want to towards other beings or towards the earth. You know, it's like these kind of things we can start to unpick and unfold, whatever they may be for us, and we can start to be more collective, and we can take feedback. And then there are ways of supporting our heedfulness as well, like a pausing, a taking time to feel into things, a resolution to keep unfolding. Thank you, Carolyn. Lovely you could be here. A resolution to keep unfolding, or like it's very interesting for me that one of the so like I think about equanimity as a way of like helping us to hold attention with things, and equanimity actually has supporting factors, ethics, faith or trust, a mind that can stay malleable, a sense of well-being, a sense of wisdom. And so there are ways in which we kind of keep fueling the ground so we can hold our attention in a skillful way. And we don't leave this to chance. We take care of it. We give it our attention. We attend. What do we wish to attune to? So with this kind of healing attention, it feels like we can take care of our path, and we can keep listening and reflecting, which is really needed in order to stay attuned to our depths and to our interconnectedness and to our capacity actually to stay fresh in our attention and to stay alert. And it feels like such a lot of the Buddhist teachings are around this. So I mean, it's a very brief touching in, but I just want, which you can all go on and look on further, you know, but I just wanted to really encourage an awareness of this capacity itself. So yeah, I'll stop there. So I hope that was helpful. There were some things in there that were helpful, and and if there's anything that wasn't helpful, then you can let your attention move around it and maybe come back to it at another time. So thank you for your listening, for your attention, for your presence. And well, maybe let's just sit together for a minute or so. And bringing attention into our own heart. Any listening that's there, any kind of thing that our attention feels brightened by, that we might want to continue to explore. And as we're doing this, also bringing attention through our body into the larger being which we're part of, so this larger web of life. Noticing where we can resource with earth or space or however that might be for us. And breathing back out any blessings, any aspirations. Mm. The alleviation of suffering, breathing that back out into this world that we're part of. Breathing that aspiration for well-being, for relief from suffering, also back into our own being, that we may learn to guide and balance our attention, to resource, and to give this gift back out. You can end there. So thank you all so much for your presence, and go well. And I think next week it will be Juna. So, okay.